Do you find yourself buying thread that you have no actual plans for ever actually using? Have you inherited or been gifted a large amount of embroidery floss? Do you constantly find thread in your stash that you don't even remember what it was for, or when you got it, or that you even had to begin with? Do you have more thread than you know what to do with? Have you run out of room for all of your various bobbin boxes? The solution is simple. Learn a new craft that you will definitely not just use as an excuse to buy more thread. Yep. Okay, silly skits aside, chances are, if you're watching this, you have a lot of floss. And not like dental floss, although you could probably stitch with that. I won't judge. But I mean embroidery floss. 6-stranded cottons. From a variety of things. It could be that you have the entire DMC set, or the entire CXC set, or the entire Lessian Cosmo set. Or it could be that you have random threads from various Chinese brands that you got off of AliExpress. Or maybe you have random leftover threads from some sort of kit that you never used. It could be that one time that you asked your partner to pick up DMC B5200 and he came back with perle cotton instead. It could be random metallics threads that you bought because they were shiny and you had no idea what you're going to do with them. Like this Japan thread. I use Kranich thread all the time, but I normally use number 4 or at most number 8. You can cross stitch with Japan thread. I've done it. I'll show that here. But it kind of sucks because it's a little thick and it doesn't like to go through the fabric very well. So what do I do with this now? I gotta find a new use for it. I have threads that were given to me as part of stitch swaps that I've been really excited to use, but I don't know what to use them for. So, if you've been doing cross stitch or embroidery or any other embroidery floss related craft, you've probably built up your fair share. I have several bobbin boxes over there that are from the thrift store, that some of which aren't even labeled. I have no idea what color they are, but I bought it and I will eventually sit down and color match them and incorporate them into my stash, but today is not that day. I have that wall of floss drops that I showed you at the beginning that is all specialty threads that I have hoarded, waiting for that special project to use them for that never comes. Does any of that sound familiar? Because if so, I have a quest for you. A challenge. I challenge you to learn a new craft and use some of that embroidery thread. Work from your stash. Now I've made it as simple as possible for you. I've compiled a list of 32 different crafts that I believe can be done with embroidery floss. Whether the standard 6-stranded or at least something similar like that perle cotton I mentioned. And I've put together a list of resources for each of them, with examples, tutorials, free patterns where applicable. Now these all assume that you have some basic materials on you, that you're already a crafter and you have some sort of stash, so you should have thread, because that's the whole point of this challenge, is to use up some of your thread stash. It'll also assume that you have basic things like scissors, needles, sewing thread, pins sometimes, some sort of fabric, even if it's just like scraps or an old sock with a hole in it. Yes, I have a meow sock, don't judge me. It will assume that you have fabric of some sort. Most of them, a lot of them, don't require specifics other than that. But I have marked some as needing specialty materials. That's so that you don't have to buy things in order to complete this challenge. You can filter out no special materials and just work from that. Great. But I encourage you to look through the ones that do require special materials because there's a possibility that you do have them on hand anyway. For example, cross stitch technically requires special materials. While you can cross stitch on just plain cotton, it sucks unless you have like some sort of tearaway canvas or the soluble canvas. Generally, you're going to want a grid-based fabric, such as Aida, or, linen. This is 36 count. It's a little bit much, but stitch over 2 and you'll be fine. That said, it's a specialty fabric, so if you didn't have it on hand, I wouldn't recommend doing cross-stitch. Now, some of that you might already have on hand. For example, chicken scratch requires not just any fabric, but specifically gingham. So if you happen to have gingham fabric on hand, you're set. Some of it just requires plain old fabric scraps, but occasionally some will require a special tool. For example, if you wanted to try micro crochet, you would need small crochet hooks. I think this is a 2 and a 2.5. Small enough to work with embroidery thread, basically. You might need something like a tatting shuttle to learn tatting, or a tatting needle, if you prefer that method. You might need beads for certain things, or beads could be optional. You can also use up your beads if you happen to have bought beads because they were pretty at some point and didn't know how to use them. That's cool too. Sometimes it'll require special materials, but they're not marked as special materials because you can make them yourself somehow. Just like a janky DIY version of a loom made of cardboard, for example, if you wanted to try weaving. Or like bobbin lace. You could stick a piece of cardboard inside a pillow to make a bobbin lace pillow and then use clothespins or really anything. You could wind your thread around a chapstick and use those as bobbins. You do you. You can figure something out just to try it out and see if you like it. And then if you do like it, you can of course go out and buy the real tools. But I've tried to make it so that the tools are either easy to get, like a couple dollars for a crochet hook, or something that you can DIY, like a cardboard loom or a cardboard kumihimo disc. So have a look over the special materials, see if you happen to have them on hand, and if not, try a different craft. Or go out and buy them. That's up to you too. I've tried to make them as inexpensive as possible. That said, here's the timeline events. It's now May. I'm releasing the list. It will be linked down below. And during May, I want you to kind of go through and get an idea of what these crafts are, which ones you're interested in trying, figure out if you do need to order materials for any of them, or at least like get the materials together in a kit of some sort, put them in a little project bag, get yourself all excited to try out your new craft. Have a look over the instructions and a general idea of what you're going to be doing. Prepare. May is for preparing. June is when we get to craft. Starting June 2024, I want you to try at least one new craft. You could try 2 or 4 or more if you have the unrealistic amount of free time. You could stack these crafts. For example, if you wanted to make a bookmark out of macrame and then you wanted to add a tassel at the end of the bookmark, those are technically 2 different crafts because you can make a tassel out of embroidery thread. If you wanted to, for example, needle lace something and then use that needle-laced object and attach it to a piece of slow stitching. Feel free to combine things. But the main thing is to just explore and try out some new things. During that time, I also encourage you to share what you're working on, either in the Pixel Stitch Discord, on Instagram via hashtag Floss Adventure, on Twitter if anyone still uses that, Tumblr, doesn't matter. Share what you're working on, because nothing is more encouraging than seeing others excited about you trying new things, or even seeing others trying the same thing as you and having the same struggles, or like, you know, figuring it out at the same time as you. Heck, you might even be able to ask them questions if they've figured out something you haven't yet, or vice versa. Being able to answer questions, even in a new craft, might be encouraging for you. Share any new tutorials you found that I maybe didn't include. You might also simply find inspiration from what others are doing. Maybe you hadn't considered a craft because it looked too old-timey, but somebody figured out a way to make a more modern version of it, and now you want to try it. It's all about sharing, guys. Now, once the challenge is over, quote unquote, it's not actually over because there's no end date, but in July, I do want you to spend some time reflecting on what you tried, what you liked about that craft, what you didn't like, whether you want to continue doing it from here out, or whether you never want to touch it again. That's an option too. Maybe you didn't even finish a project. You don't have to finish the project. You just have to try it. It's also a good time to spend some time discussing what other people did and seeing what you liked about their projects to maybe incorporate into future projects of your own. Now, if all of that sounds great, again, I have linked the Notion board that I put together with all of these crafts. There's 32 crafts in the main section. I will note that there's also an additional craft ideas section, and those are crafts that I could have added, but I didn't for a variety of reasons. For example, Brazilian embroidery is traditionally done with rayon floss, and you're less likely to have that already on hand. Or crewel with tapestry wool. But it's worth looking through there as well, just in case you do have those crafts. Like that Japan thread that I mentioned earlier. I could use that for gold work. But if you don't have special metallic threads, it's not worth it. Feel free to try those out as well. You'll just have to do some research of your own because I haven't fully fleshed those out yet. Now, if you're looking at this list and it is just overwhelming, you have no idea what you want to try, you can spin the wheel. I have a wheel linked on the main page that will randomly pick one of those 32 options for you. If you don't like it, feel free to spin again. You are not married to that choice. But if you're struggling between a couple, you can spin until you get one of them. Could be an option. Or you can make your own spin wheel with just the ones that you're interested in, so you can figure out which one you want to try first. Alright, so does that sound good? This is where I'll be leaving you for now. I will be posting a video at the beginning of June when I start my first craft. I think, what did I decide on? Tatting. Right. That's why I have this tatting shuttle. I've never tried tatting. Keep in mind I am not an expert in any of these crafts. Even cross-stitch I wouldn't consider myself a master. So I'm learning right along with you, which is perfectly fine. So, I'll be trying out tatting with a shuttle for the first time, and I'll be sharing my experiences in Discord and on Instagram and even here on YouTube. So if you're interested to see what I come up with, feel free to give me a follow and share this video with some of your other crafty friends and see if they want to take on the challenge as well. And if you've found this 2 years from now, you know what? That link should still be there. You are welcome to give any of those crafts a try. And whatever you decide to do next, keep creating.